just a wee lad, maybe only, I think I was 21 or something. And I mean, I'd been studying wood carving with various people and my father, but I had this fascination with finding craftsmen, and it's actually very difficult to find people with that kind of connection to nature and connection to the spiritual aspect in a place where modernity hasn't really like completely taken over, you know, in the sense that there's still a connection to rural life, you know, the sort of low tech and fast-hand experiences of taking the tree from the forest, drying the tree out underneath your house. And what I found working with them, with Nurhais, and it was that there was a reverence for every step, every stage there was reverence. So this is something that I'd seen working with Native American people in Canada and other like Aboriginal people in Australia. The closer people were to that traditional low-tech experience, the more reverence they had. So it's like it was like a, and I mean, what's amazing about reverence is that if you have reverence, you're in gratitude and you're immediately in awe of the world, and you're experiencing its beauty, you know, in the intention that you have in your approach. So I didn't quite know what I was looking for, but that was what I was looking for, you know, like, and it comes in really surprising places. So what happened later in that film, we were working with one of the craftsmen, I wish I could remember their names, forgive me, in the workshop. And he was kind of like the hand, you know, so he's like the fixer in the workshop. He could carve, but mostly he was, and
like he would know which would be like,
really he was just engaging with everyone and keeping things going, you know, like Nurhais's right-hand man, or I'm not sure, but he took us out to the jungle to try and find a changal tree, and this is like used for building because the ants couldn't eat it, so like the buildings you see behind you.
Yep.
And we spent all day, you know, like it was a real epic journey into the jungle, you know, getting eaten by mosquitoes and like covered in mud. And eventually we found one of these trees, and there was just a moment when everything went quiet, and you know, you could hear the reverberations of the forest, and just the majesty of this tree was incredible. And then this chap, I wish I could remember his name, he, out of nowhere, from being like this sort of cheeky chappy, he just came out with this beautiful eulogy about what it is, you know, that we're seeing. And it was like the majesty of God, and he put it so beautifully, but in such a simple way. And he, you know, because we were asking about Semangat, and I mean, the problem we have in the West is that we sort of so in our minds that we like theorize everything, and we have to understand it all that way. But I think what you get from nature and from craftsmen who are connected to nature in that way is like a transmission, like through osmosis, you know, just by being in their presence. And I felt that watching Nick Rashiddin, you know, you could see how enthusiastic he was, and how animated and how connected he was with the process, you know, how if he did, you know, only carve in the eyes, he was so drained. And I also quite like that moment, you know, he was saying, oh, we're getting somewhere now, you know, we're getting like a download, we're getting somewhere. And as he said that, could you hear the rain in the background?
Yeah.
And I thought that was very beautiful.
So thanks, Adam. I mean, that's beautiful how it is the first time you're watching the first film, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. And even though that film, like, allow me to just like put down the time, the sequence, right? Like the first film was created 20 years ago, and the film that you were in was about 10 years ago. Yeah. And we are here. Yeah. It's almost like 2 decades already. Exactly. But you tell the story of
15 years ago. Yeah, 15 years ago.
Yeah. The story of finding that chengal sounded just like it was yesterday. So thank you for sharing that. I wonder, like, what is your what is your reaction watching that first film, and because you were there at the site, at the area, at the Candice Resource Center, now Academy Nick Rashiddin. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit of your journey, so to say, as an artist? Was that the beginning of your journey, or were you already working with wood at that time?
So it wasn't the beginning, but it was very pivotal. So I'd been studying since I was a 12-year-old with my father. He's a carpenter, and then I'd been looking for various artists, and that opportunity came, and I was already starting to get some commissions, but my major concern was trying to understand, this particular traditional process, and many of the artists that I'd worked with, they didn't have necessarily that unbroken connection that I wanted to experience. So I knew in my heart that I wanted to find that, but I didn't know how. And when we went there, Nick Rashiddin was sort of like a mythical figure already, and I think he'd only passed maybe 3 years before, a couple of years before we were there. And yeah, he has an incredible legacy. It was so beautiful to watch that film, and I think he's really helped in making sure that the terminology, and which is quite authoritative, behind the motifs and the concepts, were really clear, and that legacy is continued by Nohaisan and Nick Rashiddin's brother, and so it's fantastic. He saved that tradition, really, those guys.
Yeah, inshallah. I think, to me right now, just watching this, it is a pivotal moment for me, because I'm not used to working with traditional art forms, but I would really like to try. And then I love to see how the chat box earlier, everyone was talking about, like, let's go and visit. I haven't been to that place now. I wonder, this is just a call out to the audience, if there is anyone who has been there lately. Even someone is calling in from Kelantan. Just curious, does anyone have stories of closer to today to share? Feel free to raise your hand, and then we will pass the floor to you as well. I know there are a lot of people in the audience today, but just hosting the space, that it's our space, yeah? Okay, so there's a question now from Muaz. He asks, how's your experience carving Malay weapon accessories? Did you do that?
Yeah, in fact, actually, I have the Chris handle here. Yeah,
let's
so
make
this
it a little
is
bit bigger.
it's still not finished.
You're still working on it?
Well, yeah.
All right.
But it was a beautiful process. We had to find the right wood, which is communing wood. I think it's the wood that grows over the roots of the rocks, very famously in like Kampawak and places like that, where you see these. They have very strong samangat, vital force in the and that means that the wood's very dense, so you can get that really intricate detail. Yeah, it was a great process, like it was nice because when I carved this, I think the film crew had gone and it was just me and Nohaiza. So we had quite a nice personal time there looking at the motifs, drawing them. And I mean, I was so young as well, which meant that, you don't quite realize what you're getting. I think if I'd be in much more awe now if I was there at my age, and having seen that the quality of the craftsmanship and traveling the world, and there aren't many who can work to that level.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you have the chance to come back again and like visit, because definitely there is something about being in the place, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We would love to finish the film. I mean, the thing is that it was a personal project. So we were all doing it out of our own,
I see.
Sort of resources, that's what made it quite difficult.
I see. Will there be a continuation though? I mean, I think that's what we're all waiting.
we have lots more footage. You know, we have a couple hundred hours of footage, and we have amazing scenes that we shot of like big salat performances. And the problem is that we just didn't have the finances, and we cut that first bit, which took us a month or two, and we wanted to then take that to a production company and see if we could get some help to finish the film off. But we might have to, if we do take it up again, we might have to go back out and reshoot some of the scenes. And
yeah. So you've got to make that visit, inshallah, right?
We went to visit Bamus, which are the witch doctors, and we
the Bomos.
all kinds of adventures, which were very interesting.
priceless experiences, right? So there's a question here from Ayman. He asks, what do you think of the Semangat concept? Did you experience any spiritual transmission or connection while working there?
I think I experience it all the time in my work, and I'm not sure, like I experience those moments with, you know, when we were with the tree, and it's hard when you're filming to really be in the moment. So most of those experiences, if I experience Semangat, it's really by myself, you know, like when I'm carving, and it's such a great expression that you can show others, you know, when it's really about that flow and surrender, which are so common in mystical poetry. And it's an ecstatic state, but you're working with the flow of nature. So you're working with the grain of the wood, and the grain of the wood is the Semangat. That's the vital force, and that is the growth that's in the tree. And you know, everyone knows that if you go against the grain, you know, things aren't going to work. So you have to go with the flow, with the river, with the flow of the vital force. And when you're carving, you attain that state. And I think many people don't realize that. And it only comes with a lot of dedication. In fact, people have been experiencing a little bit more now with the lockdown, and doing some classes and things where they have to sit with something. And when you sit with it long enough, suddenly you get the magic. But that's one of the bonuses of the lockdown, that I think people get to experience that, and the slow experience rather than
no more like rush hour and true.
Yeah.
I hope we can reach that state, right? Since you mentioned something about like working with wood, I'm curious. This is a curious question for me. Like when we work with sculpting or shaping forms from materials, there is this thing about wood, right, that we saw in the two films. But what if we're carving, like say motifs, wooden carving motifs, but not on wood? Like how would that differ? Is it, what's your thoughts on that? That's the materials that we're using.
Yeah, well, materials have a different feel. So if you're working with stone, it's more inert. You know, it's not like you don't have wood is always alive, and it's still moving. You know, even after it's being cut down, it still has that slightly like Joker, trickster like vibe. You know, if you're working in furniture, it can be really mischievous. You know, it can move, you know, when it changes temperature, and
expanding, contracting with the heat.
Yeah, and stone is a bit more inert, but I think you have a different process. You know, when you're cutting open stone, you're opening things up that have been dormant for like millions of years, you know, so you're breaking, you know, it's a kind of different process, and still something that you see in like Java. People use a lot of volcanic rock, and so working with different materials it's a different experience, and I think some forms they flow better within wood, you know, so you can see the leaf forms. They often, what comes naturally is what is often the right way, basically. What is easy.
I see. So even like, I mean, it just got me thinking about like the carvings that is on my virtual background now is a still from the film, from your film. And it just makes me think like this would only be possible with wood, right? If let's say somebody wants to 3D print a motif, it's not the same, right? Or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that things are becoming, you can now 3D print anything. So you could easily copy that. And in the past, you can, people would use CNC machines, but you can see from a distance that it has no life. So I think I'm not against, like, you could 3D print something and then, dress it. So you could go over and recarve into it. But there's no getting away from the life force that is in like a handmade piece, because it's a resonance of the intention of the artist. So you're looking at something and you're feeling their intention, you're feeling their efforts. And even if you're a layman and you don't quite know what you're looking at, you know when something's been made by a computer and when it, so I think that in the advent of all this new technology, there's also going to be like a nostalgia and a hankering after things that are handmade, so anyone who's making with their hands, I would stick with it, because this revolution will just, it will come full circle.
Yeah. The hands are still, it's irreplaceable, right? No matter how good of a technology, there has to be that touch from the artist is irreplaceable.
Yeah, because it's not about the intricacy, it's not about, there's something else. There's something that comes across when you use your hands, and that can't be replicated by machines.
Yeah, no AI, no machines. Okay, thank you for that. So there's a question here from Muhammad Isham. He asked, he said, this is the first time I'm watching a program about the art of wood carving. Forgive his ignorance. He said, I have a question. Do you carvers around the world admit to a psycho-spiritual connection in the work?
What's psycho-spiritual mean?
I have no idea. But maybe, Isham, if you want to explain more, you can type in the chat. I'll read it out. The question, I guess it's like a general question, but even if you want to answer it like on your own, like your own point of view, feel free.
Well, I would say that for me, so I mean, I have obviously I have my own spiritual life, and I'm very interested in Sufism and that, but that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm not interested in all cultures. Like I say, I worked in Canada with the Native Americans, and everyone's sort of speaking the same language. So for me, we're all heading home, and I want an artwork that's going to help me on my journey. So I feel like I don't have the time to get to explore like darker elements of fine art, and so I just stick to things that feel safe. And I always feel safe when I'm working with natural materials and I'm working with sacred geometry. And then when I'm working with them, I get a bit of an education, and I can't always explain it. That's why I run classes and things like that, because when I get people to participate, they get it, but it's like, they're fundamentals. And I feel when you're working with things that are connected to nature, like, as I say, geometry and draftsmanship, these archetypal forms, then you're on the right path. And because it's such a, we are sort of a little bit blind, and we would be arrogant to say otherwise, it's in like the huge, humongous bigger picture. So if you stay within these boundaries, then I think you're going to stay on the right track.
Thank you. Yeah, I resonate with that. I think, I mean, especially with like when you run classes, it's not that you are directly, there's still so much to learn, right? In redrawing or like carving the same thing over again, and back and forth with another person learning. That itself is a very precious moment. Even for myself, I mean, doing other things, other forms of art too.
I mean, I think that often the teacher's role, sometimes I feel, is just to, enables the opportunity for people to get that download, so it's like you could be just as simple as giving them the tools, edging them into the right direction, so they have the wood, they're sitting in the right way, they're approaching it with the right amount of subtlety, and then the download will come, you know, like the material will be
To
the teacher.
download, yeah. Okay, nice. I saw here Muhammad Isham explained that he translated semangat into that psycho-spiritual thing. What he meant was semangat. Yeah, but I think you've answered it already. Thank you for that. There are other questions. This one is from Alfred Fernandez. He asked, how long did it take you to master wood carving? Are there many tools that you need to use? Yeah, for wood carving.
So firstly, I would say I don't like to call myself a master. There's always more for me to learn. And I'm not sure. There are many tools within wood carving. It's very different because for about 7 years I worked as a stone carver, and you just use very few tools. You know, you have like maybe 3-4 chisels you can work with all day and just be carving away. Within wood carving, I have maybe, I don't know, like 50 or 60 chisels, you know, of all kinds of
so you change
sizes
faster.
and scales, and you're constantly sharpening and changing and working between them. And wood carving is so labor intensive that it's a very difficult occupation to have in the West, you know. So I have to sort of, you know, I do other things as well, because even with my most generous patrons, it's still like a barista wage, the amount of work you have to do in wood. But I love it. So this is one tool actually.
That's the important part. Oh, what is that?
This is called a pisawali, and it's the main knife tool. It's got a bit dirty, but the blade itself is made from a cutthroat razor.
Yeah, it looks razor sharp at that end.
Yeah. But this is the main tool used, this knife tool that there was some clips of Nick Rashiddin using this, and they have them at different sizes. And yeah, they're very distinctive tools in Kelantan. Most of the chisels, they don't have handles, and they're made from like railway tracks and, you know, melting down sort of old like metalworks. And yeah, it's, but the pisawali is the main tool. So I collect these tools from different traditions.
So you're in your studio right now, right? Like having 50 and 60 tools. You have your wood area.
Yeah. So this studio is I haven't been here for a huge amount of time. I've been here for like maybe 4 or 5 months, but I have different areas at the moment. I've been doing mostly sort of these plaster carving projects. Got a big plaster carving up here that I've been working on.
Nice.
And these are, this kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of all the tools that you need. This is an elk antler knife from Canada.
Is it oh wow. Okay, I see the elk.
Yeah, this is Japanese tool.
And these are for which materials? I mean,
this is all wood, yeah. Well, this is actually a Moroccan tool, but this is more for ceramic. But yeah, there are like boxes and boxes of tools.
Yes, boxes and boxes.
Yeah. So and then I do some, you know, like I used to work a
installation.
Fine art. These are bits left over from exhibitions that I had before in wood. So yeah, this is me.
Yeah, thank you for this this tour of your studio, and I know you've been doing like online classes as well. I think that's also how I came in contact with your work when it was shared on Instagram. Very impressive. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so there are more questions here. There's another one from Ziha. Ziha asks, can you share any similarities between motifs in sacred geometry artworks with the wooden hand carving motifs? Are there any similarities?
Between insect? Yes. Well, it's
sacred geometry, wood carving.
The sacred geometry is in the biomorphic elements, I think it's very just inherent. So there are a couple of ways to access this. You have the more rational way, which would be to divide up your canvas into the golden proportion and put the horizon, you know, at 1.618 high and so forth, right?
Yes.
Or you just find it naturally, and then you would go with, for example, like a pair of golden proportion calipers. You know, you'd use like tools like these, and you could analyze the patterns. So, you know, we could easily analyze Nick Rashiddin's carvings and find like golden proportions in there, because when you're really in tune, very often you inherently choose these proportions because they're archetypal forms of beauty, right? One of my teachers, he used to take his drawings down to the local supermarket, you know, so he would wait outside a supermarket and just ask people coming out, and, you know, like a Walmart or whatever you guys have, and he would show his work, and he would say like, oh, so what do you think of this? And they would give him an unconditional response. The layman would say like, oh, I like the proportions between these two, not realizing that they were golden proportion, but they would, you know, if I was to show one that was golden and one that wasn't. I think sometimes in the West, we're like so conditioned with all these different, we theorize it all. But when you ask just the layman, just the common, just a person on the street, you often get like a real true response. So what I'm trying to say is that I feel like when an artist reaches a certain level, when he's worked on something over and over so many times, he'll naturally edge into creating sacred harmonies.
Yeah, and perhaps that is the natural appreciation of beauty in all of us, right?
Yeah, because nature is full of sacred geometry, you know, all of it, the way it grows, the way it spirals, the way things bifurcate at certain stages of a twig, you know, it's completely there, without doubt. So if you're looking at nature enough and you're in tune and you slow down enough, then you will start creating in that formula.
Yeah, okay, thanks for sharing that. Since we're still on the topic of motifs, there's a question from Farah Hanani. She asks, what is the unique characteristic or element in Kelantan patterns that is most distinctive in your point of view compared to other culture patterns?
Okay, so they have something called the Lanka motif, which, so they had the Lanka Empire was part of Patani and Kelantan, which is, you know, the southern part of Thailand. And I'm not sure if there are much documentation of that empire, but Nick Rashiddin's idea or theory or historical view is that this empire like produced this particular motif, and that's something you don't find in Java and other parts of Southeast Asia. It's very unique. And if you give me 1 second, I was just drawing that motif.
Okay, sure. We'll wait for it. Yeah. So good to be in the studio and everything is just there. Yeah, the Lanka Suka, I guess if it's any, I come across readings where because there's so little kept from these empires, we need these motifs. Yep, I'm going to make it bigger.
This is an example of the motif here. It's mostly just this part. So it's based, I guess, very similar to a kind of acanthus leaf, but it's this spiral element here. So there's sort of 4 of those Lankasuka motifs. Or I'm not sure. This might be taken from a Norheiser drawing, but that's an example of the.
I see, and it's called like Daun Lankasuka, as you've written there, is it?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, I think for those of us who are near these wood carving motifs, we can try and spot out that pattern, right? Yeah. I have read, because I think the history of like all these empires, that there's so little kept, and sometimes it becomes mythical, right? So some people would even question like, have they ever exist, or is it a figment of our imagination? And when I think there are pages from the books from The Spirit of Wood, where Nick Rashiddin said that um, they did exist, and I think that that conviction, came from also that lifelong journey of wood carving and understanding the environment around him, right? It's yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are living in it if we can feel it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
yeah, there's more questions here. Let me just read out one from Farhan. Farhan asked, um, he asked, like he said, since your father is a carpenter by profession, do you think
Mm.
there's anything specific that he did to spark this interest in you early on?
Yeah. Apart from like forcing me to work for him,
Forcing you.
he was like, "Yeah, there's there's time to do your homework later. We have like
Oh,
cupboards to build, and yeah." So,
that's the
uh,
dream.
well, I don't know. I appreciate it now.
Yep, yep.
um,
And how early? What was the earliest memory of you doing that?
Oh, I think I was doing it from a very young age, like I don't know, like 10 or 11, or doing various things, waxing woodwork for him and various elements. And yeah, it was yeah, you were just a kid, so you just that's just where it's at. But I think what he helped me with was I wanted, just to find crafts that were functional, so he enabled me to, I wanted to get into the arts. I knew I had this a little flair, and he was just made it more practical. He's like, find functional arts, find ways in, and he introduced me to people like Eric Gill and Kuriswamy and like Martin Lings, and people with a philosophy of traditional crafts, and Gurdjieff, and so he would just feed me literature and at the right
Like
moments. So
studying without you realizing, like passively feeding
yeah,
information. That's
yeah.
great. So Farhan has an extension of the question too. He asked, as an artist yourself, what do you think we need to do to preserve these art against the test of time and to further promote it
Ah,
among the young? Yeah,
yeah. Well, that's a
interesting
very good
question.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard because we're all sort of compromise for time, and we need to find ways to stay, to stay afloat financially. And the traditional crafts are not always the easiest way to do that. And as they're not part of society. I think, just patronage and recognition and practicing it themselves, like and those are the best ways. I mean, I wanted, just the intention is where to start really. And I had the intention, and then I end up doing these classes, and, sometimes I'd rather be doing my own work, but then they keep coming, and then I see the benefit, and then it's like, great. So I asked for it.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, that sounds
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah. From one, I think like even hosting classes is part of sort of like enjoying it together. So
yeah,
some
yeah,
people have this like mental block, right? They say that they're not artistic enough, or they don't
yeah, yeah,
deal with the arts, but having it, just attending one workshop could be enough to
yeah,
break that mental block. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And there's no like rhyme or rhythm, like in the classes, people come in and some people just do it straight away. They just and it's like I think the whole idea of the 10,000 hours apprenticeship, and before you master things, it's not.
10,000.
They say, you need to do 10,000 hours of like a particular to become a master.
Oh,
But I think the skills are like transferable, so if you've like spent your childhood with a certain you know
practice.
practice, or just observational skill, where you look at things in a particular way and you're kind of dexterous, and you do it, you've been making with your hands. I think that all comes into context. I don't think it's like, oh, I started wood carving and when I was 16 and done 10 years. That's what after like
Yeah.
having classes and training hundreds of people, I see that, some just come and they're already very dexterous and understand it straight away.
It's not a linear journey, isn't it? Like we can come from any point of our life, but if we have it going, just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's just being slow, you know, like being like and people who come that are just manically lurching, it really does require like a meditative quality. And the nice thing about it is that if you not force yourself to do it, but even if you come with an anxiety or with some like more higher vibrational, you know, just the act of doing it just completely levels. And that's one thing that I feel like maybe I'll go into next, because I did some work in like mental institutions, people, and it really has a profound effect, craft and geometry, and in calming people. And so once the lockdown's finished, and because everyone's a bit nuts in the lockdown, so once that's finished,
everyone needs that healing power, right?
Then maybe we'll move to that field, to mental illness.
All the best with that. Sounds very interesting. Okay, so we have another question here from Ayman. He asks, what was the form of apprenticeship you experienced with Master Carver Nurhaiza? And has apprenticeship concept changed in these modern period?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. And I mean, I wouldn't say that I had traditional apprenticeship with Nurhaiza, because I was only there for a couple of months and we were filming, and so I spent time with him, and I had a lot of download, and I'd already been practicing for like 6 years or so. So it was like a real sharing. But I mean, he still treated me like a traditional apprentice in the way, like I remember one time he was looking at my drawing, and he was redrawing it, and he was speaking in Malay, so I couldn't understand. And I was nodding like, oh yeah, thinking he was saying really nice things. And then the translation was coming through, and he was saying, oh, your work is like dirty dishes. I just need to clean them. That traditional scolding.
Traditional scolding. Yep. It cuts deep, right? But it's effective, isn't it? Like you would like go back and see where can you show him again and like redeem yourself. Amazing.
It's good for the ego. Yeah. Because that's half of it. And in Turkey, for example, they're really aware that like when you're an apprentice, it's like also a spiritual apprenticeship as well. Like the Sufi and the craft guilds are interconnected in Turkish tradition. And that it's also about that. You sweep the floor and then you make the tea, and eventually you might be able to hold a chisel and
yes, it's all about adab, right? There's a certain
and by the time you get the chisel, you're like,
oh, wow, I've reached the stage. Makes the journey even more amazing.
Because that Western approach of like, oh, here's the chisel, here's everything, here's the wood all prepared for you, and you don't have the same reverence that you need. You're just like, oh,
wow, that right there is something we should explore into more, right? Okay, so there's a question from Amy here. She asks, are you taking apprentices currently?
I don't know if I'm I would never say I was taking apprentices, but I do have interns. So people who will come and spend time in the studio and help out like on a sort of freelance basis, depending on if I have what projects I have. So there's always people coming through the studio and help out here and there, and there will be some kind of sharing in that.
I see. So there will always be like this community within your
There's
studio.
Always been a bit of a community. Obviously, it's difficult now, but when things are going, my studio, when I wasn't traveling so much, I always have people coming through and from architectural schools and doing like, but it would be on a project by project basis.
This makes me feel like going over there and just like
so
spending time in the studio.
Like email me and like I can if I can keep people on a list for when things open up and we can
Okay,
start
okay,
again.
inshallah, yeah. So there's a lot of comments in the chat as well. I can copy the whole chat so you can read it later as well. But there has been, this is just another people have been asking about Dr. Fawaz. So I know there is the name Fawaz Ibrahim here. I'm just not too sure. Um, if he wants to share, kan Dr. Fawaz, if you would like to share, feel free. Ramai orang yang minta. There are many people who are asking for him to share. Yeah, but okay, so I know that because he did a PhD thesis on Hulu Keris, which focuses on Nick Rashiddin.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'd love
Dr.
to hear
Fawaz,
from him.
if you would like to share, I mean, yeah, if you want to share, feel free. And now he's saying no, it's going to be a long one. So another session, okay, Dr. Fawaz, later we'll keep in touch. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a lot to share. We're just opening up doors here for those people who want to know more about um, wood carving in general. We know where to go to. I actually got some links here. I haven't shared it earlier. If people want to know more about um, the academy, I can't find the exact website for the academy, but there's a Facebook page. So I hope people can feel free to see if you can enroll in a course. Those who are near in Kelantan, those who have plans after the MCO to hit the Kelantan, since we are all here. And yeah, maybe perhaps another question from me would be, what would be the best way? I guess we are all some of us who want to explore more in this, but maybe I'll speak on behalf of those who don't practice or don't have a specific art ritual, right? Like, what is the best thing to do to start with appreciating traditional arts? Yeah, an open question.
Are you asking me or the audience?
Anyone, you can answer it. If those people want to answer through the chat, also feel free. Because I think there's a lot of us here. If I look at the list, there's lots of friends, friends who are in architecture background, friends who are halfway around the world, and so yeah, I do know that some of us in architecture school, sometimes things are like they come and they go. Lessons don't really stick with us, or we're not. Yeah, things don't stick with us, or we don't stay to learn as well. So I wonder, like, what is the best way to start appreciating the traditional arts more? If it's not engaging in it, right? Like what would be the easiest way or the best way?
Yeah. Traveling.
So yeah, Alicia said traveling. Perhaps when we travel, yeah, if we open our eyes and start observing the different motifs around us, whether traditional or whether modern, that yeah, ask questions as you travel, right? Not just see and then it ends there. I think engaging with discussions, I think for me, my answer would be yeah, engaging in discussions, asking questions, reading, have an active approach if it's not a passive one where you sit and try to embody it. Yeah, but I think a mix of both, a balance between trying to experience what you can, at the same time see where at points where you can share as well. Yeah. Okay. So Adam, anything that you want to like share to? I think there's a lot of a Malaysian audience here, but yeah, something for just a few words before we wrap up.
Oh, well, I'm just very grateful to be invited here and to have experienced some of some time in Malaysia and to investigate and research and absorb such a beautiful culture. And I hope one day I can return and with and see Nohaisa and everyone. And now that I have all this experience, and it would be a fantastic sharing on a different level. So maybe we can get together in KL when that happens.
Yes, inshallah, we'll prepare for it. I know there's a lot of us here. If you do have plans, just let us know, reach out to us, and we can get things sorted as well. we'll have like a field trip perhaps if we go together to Kelantan.
Sounds
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Can't wait.
Okay, great. Yes. There's lots of allow me to read some of the words in the
Mm.
chat box. So Prof. Hamdan said that it's good to see many young people here having keen interest on handmade and traditional arts and culture. Yeah, we've got to keep the spirit going, guys. I hope a lot of young people out there who are watching this for the first time. It was my first time seeing a
Yeah.
documentary on wood carving, but even
Yeah.
just a stroll on YouTube, there's so many documentaries on carving, wood carving, traditional arts.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think I'll start diving into it after this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to say hi to some of my friends who've joined. I can see Tara and Araceli and Bridget and Shamila and Morez and all you guys. Thanks for joining. Good to see you all.
Yay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, yep, we have reached 10 o'clock. Yeah, timing. I appreciate everyone for joining us here with us. This has been a precious 2 hours together. And I do hope everyone is doing well in our own ways of healing or practicing our ritual with appreciating arts and spiritual life, right? So, alhamdulillah, thank you, Adam, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody in chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you for
right.
joining.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Yes. All the best, Adam, with your current work. And I
Thank
think
you.
you're starting the day there. I'm ending the day here. Yes.
Okay. Take care,
All
everyone.
right. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.